Hello, Instagram. Today I'm going to be speaking with Adam Haritan from Learn Your Land. He is an epic, absolutely epic educator, naturalist. He has built a huge following on YouTube. He's also got a great account here on Instagram. You guys should definitely go follow him. I've really enjoyed watching his content. He posts very educational, very methodical, great in-depth views at the ecology, the nature. I know he's been an inspiration to a lot of people, myself included, and so I'm just really excited and really grateful that he is willing to chat with us. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get him on the horn here. We'll give him just a minute, but I am, just over the moon excited to be speaking with Adam, and I'm just waiting for him to join the call. And the way that these live talks usually go is I'm going to be doing most of the talking with Adam, and I'll keep an eye on the questions. So if you have something you want me to ask him, you can definitely put it in. But mostly it's going to be a conversation between us, and we can kind of follow up with other stuff afterwards. So Adam just joined. I'm going to get him on the call now. All right, let's go. It's going to be a good one. Hopefully Wi-Fi works. There you are. Hey, Adam.
Hey, how's it going, Gordon?
Pretty good, man. It's good to see you.
Yeah, sorry I'm a minute late. Took me a while to figure this out.
It's just the nature of actually doing something live as we get to deal with this.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's been a while since I've done something live, so let's see how this goes.
So we were just chatting a few minutes ago, but you were telling me that the mushroom season out there has been a little slow, maybe because it was kind of dry this year.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's been really dry this year compared to last year's. I mean, I've been hunting mushrooms for many years, and this is probably the driest year in the past 6, 7, 8 years. But I mean, so the mushrooms might not have been that great all year round. Right now, things are kind of picking up, which is kind of strange because it's late October. But I was out today. I was finding so many in a pine plantation. But the trees this year have been doing really, really well. And the flowers and the fruits and the nuts. So it's been a great year overall. But as far as the fungal kingdom, maybe not so many fruiting bodies that we're used to.
But that's okay because nature has its sort of natural variations, and because everything is sort of connected and it's all part of a whole, it's buffering a little bit. So maybe the mushrooms didn't go nuts, but like you're saying, the fruits and many of the other things did. So hopefully next year we get lots of rain and it'll be an on year for mushrooms.
Yeah, and it's been interesting because here in Pennsylvania, it's been dry, but a lot of the saprotrophic species are doing really, really well. And I guess that kind of makes sense. It seems like wood might store more water. And I mean, chicken of the woods, every time I went out, I find a fresh flush of chicken of the woods, almost every single time, and oysters and all these other saprobes. But it seems like the mycorrhizal species kind of took a year off.
I
think they'll be all right.
A similar experience last year with California in that there was a little bit of rain and all the saprobes, the oysters and the jack-o'-lanterns and stuff went for it. But then I was kept waiting for the mycorrhizal species to kick in. And we never quite got enough rain, so our season cut out last year in the middle of February, and that was it. And I was like, oh, it's so heartbreaking to see a season like that. But at the other time, there's variations, and you find stuff, and it's chicken of the woods one year, and another year it's something else. So
yeah, for sure.
So I want to ask you a little bit about your educational background and kind of what led you to foraging, and what brought you to where you are now with your education and stuff?
So I got into this kind of innately, and I took some other paths before I finally arrived at mushrooms and naturalists and all that kind of stuff. But I got into this mainly through health and nutrition many years ago. I mean, I started studying health and nutrition maybe in 2007, 2008, largely out of personal reasons. I mean, I wanted to know what foods were good for my body, and I was interested in sharing this kind of information with other people as well. And some of the nutritionists that I studied from early on would talk about mushrooms and medicinal mushrooms and chaga and reishi and turkey tail and all these kinds of things, and it piqued my interest. because I was getting into herbalism at the time as well. But I had no idea that almost every single mushroom that was listed as like a medicinal mushroom actually grew here in Pennsylvania. I thought I had
Yeah,
to order these things online. And in
they
fact, I
always seem
did
so
order a lot of them
exotic,
online.
but you have them
Yeah,
in
I
your
mean,
own
I was used to
backyard.
buying like ginseng from other countries and ashwagandha and all these
Hmm.
different either Chinese herbs or South American herbs or things that weren't native to North America. So I thought for sure that the maitake mushroom had to be imported from Asia. And so I went online and I ordered some. And I was so happy to get that bag of maitake mushroom. And then maybe it was a week or two later, my friends said that they were going maitake hunting in the center of Pittsburgh, like not too far away from downtown, the city of Pittsburgh. And I was just blown away. So I immediately like stopped ordering mushrooms online and thought I could find a lot of these things myself.
Right.
But it was a slow process at first. And honestly, it wasn't just that, like the health and nutrition piece. It was, I was interested in learning anything out there. I mean, even trees, plants, animals, all those kinds of things. But I think I largely focused on mushrooms because there were a couple people close to me that were getting into it at the same time. And we had
Hmm.
so many good years between like 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16, just mushroom years, just so many mushrooms in the woods. And I thought it was always like that. I thought it was always going to
Yeah.
be like this, you know? And you see some of this, you see that kind of feeling online today when people just, they're getting into it. And I know what it's like because it wasn't too long ago when I got into it. But they get into it during one of those like incredible years where they're finding everything.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, it's great now. Just wait until you're not finding
Yeah,
everything.
just wait until it's not. I mean, people look at my
Yeah.
page and like, bro, how do you find so many mushrooms? And I'm like, I really don't. I go out a lot and I get skunked a lot. I just go
Oh,
out
yeah.
frequently, and you can always find something, and that's usually enough to just like, make a post or make a quick video kind of thing. But more often than not, you're wandering around in nothingness. Right.
Yeah, I mean, when I film a video and put it on YouTube, I spend hours and hours and hours and hours looking before I come up with anything.
Right. Right.
It's not that easy. Sometimes, though, I get lucky. It's like I go out and
Sometimes.
boom, there's something that I can film. But many times it's hours of scouting and not putting anything out, which is why there's only a video maybe every 2 or 3 weeks.
Right.
Sometimes it takes that long for me to find something worthy of talking about.
Yeah, there's cadence to the work. But did you have in your journey of kind of getting into mushrooms and then, opening yourself up to the rest of foraging, which is, I think, something that I definitely identify with, of coming in sort of from an interested, like, edible nutritional angle on mushrooms, and then realizing that there was such a broader array of things out there. Did you have like a gateway mushroom or some experience that like really helped cement it and inspire you to go out and learn more?
Yeah, I mean, it was the medicinal mushrooms early on. It was reishi and chaga, probably those two.
Okay.
And honestly, today I still look for them. I mean, I have a lot stored, so I don't have to actively like forage it a lot. And I cycle through things. But early on, I mean, I like to say those things keep me tethered to the forest. Because even if I get away from the forest for too long, for days or, God forbid, a whole week, and it's been a long time since I've spent a week in a city environment and not out in the woods. But if that would ever happen, it's like I gotta go back into the woods. And Rishi and Chaga initially did it for me because I just would hunt and hunt and hunt and look for these kinds of things. And it took me a long time to find them and to find good spots. But even when I'm driving in my car, I'm still looking for things popping out of trees, hoping it's some kind of mushroom. And so I drive really, really slow, really slow, because I'm always looking for things. I'm looking at the trees. I'm looking for springs in the side of the road. But yeah, those were the original mushrooms that got me into it. But any fungus that's out there, I mean, I look out the window and I'm constantly looking for things. Many times it's not a mushroom, it's just like a bag of trash, or it's like the neighbor's soccer ball, or like a Gatorade bottle. But you never know. It could be that mushroom that you're looking for.
We had that experience earlier this year where my partner was like, "That's a Cheetos bag," or she's like, "There's a Cheetos bag. Maybe that's a lobster mushroom." And we went and looked. No, it was a Cheetos bag. But the next Cheetos bag we saw was actually a lobster mushroom. So sometimes keying in for trash is, you can be out there picking it up and doing your due diligence in the woods and helping the environment and hopefully finding some mushrooms. So
yeah, for sure.
It's definitely a good thing. But I've had a similar kind of experience of driving and getting sort of distracted, and even sometimes worrying the people that I'm with, because I just pull over out of nowhere and they're like, "What's wrong, Gordon? Did you like poop your pants?" I'm like, "No, there's a mushroom." And
Yeah, I mean, I think it's only natural. I think it's unnatural to not do that. I mean, it's unnatural to be in a car and just constantly looking at the road. I know you have to do it. I know that's smart driving, and I do it as much as I possibly can. But I think it's just human nature to want to scan and just go around and see anything that's moving or anything that's a little different than it was the day before. So I'm always looking around. I mean, even when I'm walking in the woods with friends, which is kind of rare because I do a lot of this stuff on my own, they comment consistently how my eyes just keep looking around. And I'm just like looking like this all the time. Because you never know what's out there.
Yeah. Well, that's a great tip to anyone who's like interested in foraging. That's one of the things you can do is it's pretty easy to go on a hike and get stuck looking at your feet or maybe at one level. And it really does pay off to pay attention to what's above you, what's beneath you, what's, on the periphery. There's so much kind of out there that you can key into. So it's really exciting to like be able to adjust your focus and zoom in and out on things too. And that's something like I've discovered with my macro lens is how something that seems totally boring, there's this big dead log, it's just a big dead log. What's interesting here? And you're like, well, I just found 10 species of mushrooms as well as like 6 different slime molds. I could spend hours on this single log. And they're like, come on, man, can we at least go like half a mile into the trail?
Yeah, you don't need to go far. I mean, some of my best hunting is super local, but then you'll drive 3 hours to the supposedly prime spot. And I hate to say there's not much because there's always something.
Yeah.
But sometimes you don't meet your expectations.
Sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, we need a garbage bag to fit everything we've got here. And sometimes you're like, wow, I'm happy I have like one single turkey tail to take home.
Yeah, so, nothing wrong with that.
Nature of the beast. Okay, so I have like a list of sort of interesting mushroom questions for you here. And I don't know if there's any real rhyme or reason to them, but let's just start somewhere. This is a good one because you just made a video about eating, or at least finding and potentially eating stinkhorns. And those are very weird mushrooms. I mean, they're saprobic mushrooms that start in little eggs, and they come up and they take all sorts of extraordinary octopus, crazy red basket looking shapes, as well as some fairly rude, potentially crude shapes, as stinkhorns go. But they are edible. And there's something I've never tried. I keep thinking about it, but what was your experience eating a stinkhorn, and like, what compels you to eat something that smells like rotting stuff?
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually out looking for a tree. I've been obsessed with trees lately. So I was looking for a tree called American mountain ash, which is not too common in Pennsylvania. It's not even a true ash, but it's got ash in its name because the leaves look kind of ashy. And on the way out of looking for mountain ash, I found maitake mushrooms. Nice. I was like, cool, maitake mushroom. This is the beginning of October. And I filmed a video on it and I put it on YouTube. And then I kept looking around a little more because that's just what I do. And I found a picnic area and big piles of mulch and picnic areas. And I thought, I got to check every single one of those. And the first one I went up to, just full of all different kinds of mushrooms, including Ravenel stinkhorn, which is the one that I featured in the video, Phallus ravenellii. Mm-hmm. And the first thing I do is I got to photograph it, and I got to capture film footage, because you never know if you're going to use film footage. Mm-hmm. If you put this stuff on YouTube, maybe somewhere down the line you'll use the footage. So I spent like 20 to 25 minutes just capturing all this footage, and I walk away, and then it hit me, wait a minute. I know these things are edible, and I've never eaten them, but people ask me all the time about it, and I thought, I'll just try it. I mean, there's so many of them. Yeah. So I went back, and I harvested a couple of the eggs, and honestly, I didn't know how to cook them because it's not in American culture. Like, how do you cook a stinkhorn egg? And none of my relatives know how to cook stinkhorn. Most of my relatives don't even know how to cook mushrooms. And I know there's some things online as well, but I just thought, I'm just going to try it just without even doing much research on it. And if people make fun of me for the way that I try to cook it, well, this is my experience. I'm just trying it. I'm here with you. So I cooked it, I think, 5 different ways. And it surprised me a lot because it was more vegetable-y than mushroomy. It tasted like a vegetable, like a radish to me. It was kind of crunchy.
Okay, so and crunchy, do you have a little spice in it, or mostly just texturally?
Afterwards, texturally and the taste of it as well. It wasn't hot like a hot radish, but it kind of had like a radishy kind of flavor to it. And it was mildly crunchy. And some pieces were actually crunchier than others. And that really surprised me. But I wasn't turned off at any point. It wasn't like, oh, this is so gross. I can't believe I'm putting this into my body. Honestly, what would be grosser is like putting Snickers bars into my body, or like an ice cream sundae, or just like complete junk food. Like, I don't know how people do that, or like a Mountain Dew. Like, I'll take a Stinkhorn any day over that kind of stuff. It's funny when people talk about what's edible and what's not. You go in the grocery store and like 95% of that stuff should not be eaten whatsoever. But don't eat the Stinkhorn. Anyway, I ate the Stinkhorn, and I was not grossed out at all. And I thought it was pretty good. But at the end of the video, I explained, and I guess I'll give it away for anybody who's watching this and hasn't watched the video.
You should still go watch the video, definitely.
You should still watch the video. But my conclusion was that, it fruits at a time when maitake mushrooms are fruiting, and lion's mane's out there, and honey mushrooms, and oysters, and enoki, and there's just so many choice edible mushrooms. And there's apples falling, and there's acorns, and there's hickory nuts, and there's nanny berries, and there's rose hips. There's so many different things you could forage, and it's deer season as well. And it's like, not that I'd be starving to go after the Stinkhorns, but in the future, I'll probably have to have a better reason to go forage them and eat them. Yeah, but if I'm with a group of people and I'm teaching a class, I would definitely harvest them and cook them for people. It's not bad. It's good, but it's not great.
That's good feedback. And it's interesting because Stinkhorns, I think there is some discrete regionality to Stinkhorns, but because of the way the international lumber trade functions, Stinkhorns and that whole genus of stuff has been spread around the world in a really interesting way. And so I see a ton of the Clathrus ruber, which I think originally is from like Australia or New Zealand, but it's all over California because it's coming in on like the wood chips and the mulch that comes from the international timber trade. So I think there's been a really interesting like mass migration of Stinkhorns all over the world in a way that hasn't been seen with other mushrooms because they're saprobic, because they can get transferred around, and because of that sort of the way that mulch is moved between countries. So I think it's one of those mushrooms that really captivates people because they're wild looking, they smell weird, they're covered in flies. I mean, they're so alien looking, and yet they are edible. And in China, they are fairly popular, although I think usually they will pickle them. I think that's kind of the preferred method, to like pickle the eggs kind of thing. Because I've read into like preparing them too. I've picked up the Clathrus ruber a bunch of times, but I'm always a little turned off by the smell. And it's usually, like you said, I've got like other things that are better edibles, so I haven't gotten around to it yet. But you've inspired me. I will for sure try them. And I know like Leah Mycelia has told me multiple times that I need to like pony up and give it a shot. So I will, I'll try someday. But so I'm curious, that Stinkhorns might be some of the worst smelling mushrooms that you find. Do you have a favorite mushroom that you like for the smell? Or is there like a species or a genus that you're particularly fond of the smell? Because people forget all the time that mushrooms have these amazing smells, and you can't share that over Instagram, but we can at least tell people about it. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. Honestly, nothing really pops out. Besides, I mean, obviously, like chanterelles and black trumpets, I think they smell great, especially when they start to dehydrate and you put your nose into it. I mean, there's some boletes around here that smell like soup broth or bouillon.
Oh yeah, the beef bouillon. Yeah, I haven't seen those before. Those sound cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure the extensive range of that bolete species, but fortunately, in my community, they just grow like crazy in good years. And so I can harvest bags and bags and bags and bags full of it. They smell great, but honestly, the smell dissipates whenever you cook it. So you really don't get that essence. I mean, there's just a lot of cool ones out there. But honestly, I like the way that the Stinkhorn smelled. It wasn't like a rotting meat kind of smell. And honestly, that's why I tried that one. Because clearly there are Stinkhorns that smell completely like horrible. Like you would not even want to put that anywhere near your body. And I probably would not consider eating those ones. But this one smells like a bakery, like a moldy bakery. It smells kind of yeasty or dough-like. Okay. Maybe kind of cheesy as well. So it does not smell that bad. Not that it's my favorite smelling mushroom, but it's not bad.
Do you guys have any of the like almond scented agarics out there? Do you run into those at all?
Yeah, we do. We've got a lot of them. This year, not so many just because of the lack of rain, but we do get that as well. Okay. Yeah.
And do you have, I know that I've heard from some people that there's like an East Coast candy cap version of that has that kind of maple smell.
Yeah, I found some today actually, and I was sniffing them. I was in a spruce forest, and a lot of them were popping up. I think it's part of the maybe Lactarius campheratus group, but
Okay.
I don't think it's probably the exact species. I think that's just like a general species group for it. It smells great, but it doesn't taste that good at all. At least like raw, whenever I chew it and spit it out. But I've never used it for anything other than just like bring it home, dehydrate it, and just smell it. And it just literally smells like maple syrup whenever you leave it out.
It's pretty incredible. I'll make little syrups with it, and then I'll put some of that syrup into like whipped cream, so you kind of make like a maple whipped cream. That's a pretty nice way to do it. So cool. Well, yeah, I'm keyed into smell because of my background in wine, and I was really amazed when I started mushroom hunting how much could be conjured from just picking a mushroom up. And you assume all of them are going to smell like mushrooms and dirt. And then most of them do, but there's a few that really like kind of challenge your perceptions and what you might have thought about it. So I
actually, that
kind of fascinating.
One actually does come to mind. There's one that smells like cinnamon.
Oh, that's cool.
There's no common name for it, but it's a Steccarinum species. Are you familiar with that genus?
No.
I'm not sure the extent of that mushroom. Steccarinum, it's kind of like it looks like a polypore, but it's got teeth on the underside. But I don't know if it is I'm not quite sure like where it falls in the taxonomy tree, but I think it's a polypore mushroom. Okay. But it kind of separates as it gets older. And it smells like cinnamon, so I call it the cinnamon mushroom. Cool. I don't think it's edible. I've chewed on it, and it doesn't taste that good. But as long as you have it sitting out, or as long as you have a log of it, it smells really, really good.
Nice.
Yeah, Steccarinum raukensi is the sub-raukensi is the species name.
Very cool.
Funky name.
Yeah, it's not one I've heard. I'm gonna have to look into it. Have you ever done a post on it or shared anything?
No,
about it?
I thought about it, but I thought I don't have much else to say besides it smells really good.
Sometimes that's all you can say.
It doesn't look that great. I mean, there's not much else I can say about it. There's hardly any research on it, and it'd probably be a pretty short video.
Yeah, I got you. I have hundreds of photos of mushrooms on my phone that I'm like, this was interesting, but it's not quite interesting enough to like make a whole post out of it. And I don't know what else I would say other than look at this thing I found, So there's some inherent stress with like trying to educate people because you feel like you need to put out content that's educational enough to make it worthwhile, I guess, instead of just kind of pooping stuff out and saying, hey, look at this thing I found. And you're like, I want to do that sometimes. I thought about like maybe making a secondary account where I can just dump all the stuff that I find that doesn't quite make the grade, but I don't know.
Yeah, because when I put out videos on YouTube, I try to keep them like at least 5 minutes, but 10, 15, 20 is usually what I'm going for. And sometimes I do add extra things, and sometimes people get really mad at you. I mean, they're quick to tell you what they don't like about your videos, including, why are you talking about this? You always talk about this, or it's distracting, it's pulling away from the main concept that you're trying to address to us, but whatever, it's all good stuff to me.
I think when I've watched your videos, I think you do an excellent job blending sort of the sense of place and even maybe a little bit of like the feel of you being in the environment. And I really appreciate that about your videos, is that you give that context for then finding the thing that you're talking about. And so from my perspective, I love it when you share extra little things that you found kind of in that day's journey. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, plus it took me like 72 straight hours to search it out, to film it, to edit it, to upload it. The least you could do is just watch an extra 2 minutes of me talking about ectomycorrhizal species and what that actually means.
yeah, for real.
And it's an ad-free video too. You don't have to sit through any ads.
That's huge. Yeah, man. Education is so important. And speaking of that, so you're not monetizing a lot of your stuff, but you do teach classes and you have some online courses that people can, if they want to support you, they can log on and like, buy your courses to learn far more in depth on some of these things, right?
Yeah. So all my YouTube videos are ad free, every single one. You don't have to sit through anything unless YouTube's going to force me to do it, which I hope they don't do. But you're never going to have to sit through a political ad. You're not going to have to watch like a Keebler commercial, like trying to sell you cookies, or like a Ford commercial or anything. I've never clicked on one of those watching another person's YouTube channel, be like, oh, that's a good idea. You're right. I think I'm going to buy that. So I really don't understand why a lot of people do that. And I guess you make some money, but like, is that really worth it? Like, learn another way to make money. So yeah, I teach a lot of classes, and that's how I'm able to pull in some money. But I do have an online course as well, and I'm currently working on a second one. So the benefit of that is people who can't travel to Pennsylvania, I'm able to reach them. And if I'm not able to travel to where they are, the same thing. And it's lifetime access. So once you get it, you have it for a lifetime. And it's exclusive to the course. It's not stuff that's on YouTube.
That's awesome, man. I'm so impressed that you're out there sharing that kind of knowledge. And I think there's a real gap in some ways. I think a lot of the people in the mushroom community are, of the boomer generation or older at this point. And in our generation, there are people who've stood up and started trying to educate. And I think we're watching that process in real time with, channels like yours. And certainly what I'm trying to do is just get people aware of this incredible world of fungi that's out there beyond, the banner things like the psilocybes that everyone loves to kind of wave around and talk about. But there's so much diversity. There's so much interesting biology and ecology and other things that goes into it. I'm curious in your area if there's a particular kind of ecological relationship that you see again and again, or something that you've noticed that you think is kind of interesting or fascinating, and maybe a tie-in between like the trees and the plants and the insects and the birds and like a mushroom or something like that. Is there any kind of ecological process you've keyed into?
I mean, there's so many, and there's so many that I don't know
I know
about.
It's hard to choose just one, but
Only
is there anything
few
that comes
I
to
do
mind?
know about.
Yeah.
I mean, anytime I walk out there, you can't help but understand that everything is connected to something else and nothing exists by itself. And then I look at myself and I think, well, I'm out here by myself and I put out videos by myself, and I have friends, trust me, I do, but I tend to do a lot of things by myself. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, this doesn't add up. I should be part of a bigger community. And I know that I am. Like, clearly, I'm not just one single thing. Multiple species of bacteria, multiple species of fungi are inside me as well. And that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
I guess there's some viruses inside of me as well. And I suppose that's a good thing as well. So I try to see the interdependence of everything that's out there. But one very obvious thing, which a lot of people probably know about, but don't give it enough credit, is, oak trees are so common. Mm-hmm. They're so common on at least 4 different continents, maybe even more. And they're not necessarily the tallest trees. They're not necessarily the strongest trees, but they're resilient and they're just common. I mean, you go in any kind of ecosystem in North America, most of them, you're probably going to find at least some species of oak tree. But very few people know why there are so many oak trees, or why oaks were able to spread so far after the last ice age and keep going north and north and north at such a rapid pace. And it's because of birds, and it's one particular kind of bird, which is the jay. Not just blue jays, there's a bunch of different jays. And so every time I see a jay, I think, you are a gardener of oak trees. And that's what they do. And a lot of birders don't like birds. And a lot of people think, oh, they're just squawking, or they're just annoying, or they're just stealing things. But I see them as farmers or gardeners of oak trees. Mm. And if you look in the world where the greatest diversity of oak trees is, which is, I believe, in Mexico, the greatest diversity of jays as well. And the jays take the acorns and they take them away from the mother oak tree, not too far away, but far away, and they plant it at the perfect depth in the soil. Just a few inches, not too far down, but at the perfect depth, and usually at edges of areas. So tall grass or short grass, or fields and meadows or woods and like woodline. And they plant them there where oaks grow best, away from the shade of the mother oak tree. And then the oak forests just extend and extend and extend and extend. And then, of course, with oak trees, how many mushrooms are associated with oak trees? And how many people make that connection between the mushrooms that are associated with oak trees and jays? Like, nobody ever says, oh, Strobelomyces is a bolete mushroom. Thank a jay for that. But it's like, you better thank a jay for that, because that mushroom is associated with that oak tree, which was probably planted there many years ago by a jay. Now, I know there's other animals associated with oaks. There's bear, there's squirrels, there's all kinds of things. But jays do it best. They do it better than anything that's out there. And so mushrooms and jays are intimately connected. Maybe not directly, but they are.
It's really cool to think about. And it's interesting to think, too, that oaks are ending up on the margins, of fields and forest. And frequently that's a very productive zone for mushrooms, at least in my experience, is looking at that margins. And I wonder if some of that is because you have full-grown trees that are connected to the mycelial network, and they're trying to reach out to those sort of, nascent trees and connect them to the network. So part of the reason you're seeing that big flush of mushrooms right around the margins is because the mushrooms are there trying to extend that mycelial network and work in concert with the seedlings. And I've certainly seen that in some forests where you have old growth near new growth, and all the area around the new growth is just covered. And that's the only time I've ever seen a orange out of like chanterelles, was a couple of new trees that were being established. And that was sort of my hypothesis, that like in these areas of disturbance, there's extra mushrooms. And interesting to think about the interplay of birds and mushrooms and oak and all this stuff. So yeah, that's a good insight.
I mean,
not something I thought about.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like you read it anywhere. You read a lot about oaks and jays, but not necessarily the mushrooms. But I like to throw the mushrooms in there as well, because it's just what I do.
Yeah. Well, it's so important. Like we talked about, you are looking all over when you're hiking, and it's the same kind of thing with the ecology. You can't just look at just the birds or just the mushrooms or everything is connected. And so your view has to be 360, and the ecology and the environment is a 360 view of all of those things integrating together, which is it's so cool. And it's so interesting that we're finally at the part of biology and science where we are, in a very non-hippie way, saying things are really connected, and like we're starting to be able to quantify and understand some of those relationships and track the ecology, which has been known for a long time, but has been, I think, largely ignored in some ways, that things need to be connected for them to work properly. Otherwise the system just falls apart. So I'm curious, do you have a favorite genus? Because I know I get asked a lot, like, hey, Gordon, what's your favorite mushroom? I'm like, I can't possibly answer that because there's too many, and it kind of changes and goes with the seasons. But is there a particular genus that you feel really connected to? Is it one of those medicinal ones, or is it something else that you had like an experience or connection with?
I mean, honestly, nothing comes to mind. With anything in life, I don't think I have a favorite anything. And I might seem like the most boring person in the world because, Adam doesn't have a favorite anything, but
no, not at all.
I see the benefits and the downsides of everything that's out there. Like, I try to just like ride the middle ground with a lot of things. So like, it doesn't matter what genus it is. I could see a positive with it. I could probably see a negative with it as well. But I don't actively think about like, that's my favorite genus. I don't even think I have a particular favorite mushroom either. It always changes, but it's usually the one that I most recently learned or that I'm studying at the moment. And then it goes away, and then it's the next one. Then it's the next one. I mean, like today I found a bunch of tricholoma mushrooms, and tricholoma is just not a genus that a lot of people give enough credit to. There are edible mushrooms in there. There's some toxic ones as well, but they're a late season species, at least here, or genus here in Pennsylvania. You typically see them in September, October, November, maybe even into December. Cap and stem mushroom with gills, so not many people forage them compared to like the big hen of the woods or the chicken of the woods or lion's
They're
mane.
not as easy to identify, and like you said, there's some edible and some toxic.
Difficult.
Yeah.
But I mean, before this call, I was just like flipping through my tricholoma book, so I guess that was like the genus of the day for me. So maybe I'll just throw tricholoma out there. But tricholoma today, who knows what will be tomorrow.
That's cool. I mean, that's the same genus that Matsutake is in. So certainly if you guys aren't familiar with tricholoma, then Matsutake is the one that you know for sure. And even that mushroom is pretty interesting because we have a distinct East Coast and West Coast version of that mushroom, as well as maybe one or two more species that are sort of Matsutake-esque. And I've had people texting me and asking me, hey, is this a Matsutake? And I'm like, it's really hard to tell you from a picture, because most of the time the only way I can really truly differentiate something is by nose, because that's another one of those mushrooms that it's just so aromatic. And even the way that you cook it, the first time I got it, I was like, oh, fry this up in butter like you would any mushroom. And then I tried it. I was like, this is terrible. What's the big deal? Why do people like this mushroom so much? And then I did some more research and was like, oh, because people don't normally fry it in butter. They're putting it into rice or in soups. It's got a very ethereal, high note kind of character that blows off easily with heat. So you want to cook it in a way that it sends that aroma into the food or preserves it without heating it too much. But yeah, that's certainly when people have been asking me, hey, Gordon, what's your favorite mushroom? I've been saying I'm really excited for Matsutake because they grow here in California with tan oak. And I know up in Oregon there with pine and some other conifers and stuff like that. So, but yeah,
that's funny. So I said
my
my favorite genus is tricholoma, and you said your favorite species is tricholoma. So we're on the same wavelength. We didn't plan this, folks.
No. But that does go up and down with the seasons, because sometimes I feel that when people ask me what's your favorite, I'm like, well, whatever's in my basket right now is my favorite. Whatever I can find. So. I guess I'm curious too, and this is something I like asking mushroom people, but do you have, and this is sort of a two-part question that may go hand in hand. Do you have a like bucket list mushroom that you haven't found that you'd really like to find? And then follow up is there like a mushroom region that you haven't visited that you'd really like to go to? And those could be exclusive or, together kind of thing as an answer.
I mean, honestly, no and no.
Oh, okay.
I know it sounds like, why would you answer in that way? Like, of course, you're the mushroom guy. You should have a bucket list mushroom. You should have some region that you want to go to. But honestly, I love everything that appears here in Western Pennsylvania. At this point in my life, I feel like there's just so much to learn here that I don't need to go too many other places. And I guess I'm answering your second question first. And also, it's not just about the mushrooms with me anyway, because I'm so curious about the trees and the plants and the wildflowers and the animals as well. And like I said, one of the reasons that I'm doing all this is to feel more connected to this land right here in Western Pennsylvania. And the second I start moving away from this place and learning other things, I'm being pulled away from this place. And that's okay. It's a great way to learn things. And I do like traveling, but I feel like there's too much to learn right here. And so I don't just hunt mushrooms to eat. I don't just find mushrooms to like check another mushroom off the list. I'm like, that's number 458. Let's see if I can do 459 tomorrow. Really, none of that stuff inspires me. It's how connected do I feel to Western Pennsylvania, like specifically to Western Pennsylvania. Like, I love this area so much. And if I would ever have to move away, it would be very, very heartbreaking because I'm putting so much energy and attention and my time into learning this that I feel like I probably have like the level that maybe a 4-year-old would have in like a healthy community that was raised on the land here in Western PA. Like, I'm still at the very, very beginning. But if you pull me away and put me somewhere else, I'll be newborn, completely newborn. And I feel like it would take me so long to try to catch up. And I know there's a lot of overlap.
I think you
there's a lot
catch
of
it
things that are
pretty quick.
specific to this area.
Yeah.
Yeah, but as far as like the specific areas, and I mean, you've got hot spots. I've got hot spots as well. Just places that really, really feel like home. Like, it really feels like home. I feel like it would take a long time to just find those places. So I'm investing, like, I'm putting a lot of pressure on myself to just spend time here at the expense of traveling the world and going to all these different areas, hoping that it all pays off in the end. But I'm not afraid to travel. Like, I'll do that for events, and I like finding new species for sure. But I like it here a lot. If you've never been to Western Pennsylvania, it's a really cool place.
Well,
but as far as bucket list, I mean, as far as a bucket list mushroom, not really. I don't have one. Whatever shows up is probably the mushroom I need to learn, and I'm okay with that.
That's a good approach. I mean, that, you were learn your land, right? So that answer makes more sense to me than almost anything else you could have said, because what you find is what you need to learn. And that is the real iterative process of why you go out there and you look, because every time you go for a hike, whether you're getting skunked or whether you're having a fantastic day, there's going to be something you run into that you don't know. And one of the best pieces of advice I ever got about learning mushrooms was, don't try to learn all the mushrooms. Don't look at one of these posters and assume that you can identify everything, but go out on hikes, and every time you go out, learn one mushroom. Try to internalize what that thing is, understand its habitat. What did you find it under? Where was it, what was it near? And that sounds kind of like your ethos, your basic approach to just getting out there and learning your land. Which I guess follows up in sort of a natural transition to me asking, like, do you have a deep down reason or drive as to why you want to teach people about mushrooms? What do you hope to accomplish, like, in the world by sharing and teaching people about your land and about mushrooms? Oops, I think my Wi-Fi's off a little. There it is. Okay.
Am I on?
Yeah, you're good. I think that was me.
Okay. So I studied nutrition for a long time, and I studied the different nutrients: vitamin A, the B vitamins, vitamin C, D, E, all these different vitamins, minerals, and we call those nutrients. But one nutrient that we rarely ever talk about is our land and nature. And I truly feel that the more species that you learn, the more connected you feel to a land. That's like a nutrient coming into your body. And it's just something that we don't have today in our culture. I don't think we value it at all. And I know in my personal life that it's been incredibly healing. It's given me a sense of purpose to learn my land, and I know other people can feel the same. I mean, you see so much suffering, you see so much confusion in people's faces, you see the physical health of people, and you could be doing all the diet stuff right, you can have the exercise down, but then people start getting into biohacks almost as a way to like hack their way into acquiring a connection to land without actually going out there and learning it.
Right.
So it's a missing piece of the puzzle. It truly is, and not many people talk about it. As far as actually not just going out and forest bathing. Like, I'm not a fan of forest bathing. I'm a fan of actually going out and interacting with the organisms that live where you live. I mean, just like if you would join any kind of group, you go to school or you start a new job, you want to learn the people there, right? Because you're going to be hanging out with these people. Well, you hang out with a lot of organisms when you're outside in nature, and why not learn the names of them or learn just how they're connected or why they're there? And you're probably not going to get all the answers ever. I don't think that's the point of it, but at least you will develop a deeper connection to those organisms, and with that deeper connection comes a reason to protect it as well. Because if we don't have this connection, well, what's going to stop somebody from coming in and putting another strip mall there, or
Right.
a logging operation comes in, or a fracking operation comes in, or new housing development? Those are people who don't know those organisms that they're ripping away. And I would love it if every developer could at least, before they develop, just learn all the organisms. You can't develop this land unless you can name everything that's right there that you're taking out. If you can do that, fine. Maybe you can pull some of that stuff out there. But don't hire some environmentalists to come in and do that work for you. You do it because you're pulling them out. But they'll never do it, because it's easier just to pull things out without knowing. But if you would start to learn that kind of stuff, you would feel a deeper connection. And I just wish that people would realize that it actually is really important. Just like water is important, just like sleep's important, just like quality relationships with significant others in your life is important, so is learning your land.
That's, man, what a statement. Can we like put that on a billboard somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, you see somebody crazy,
sentiment.
but like, who even like looks at billboards these days, you know? But I always thought, oh, it'd be great to just put on a billboard like eat apples or have a good day, like just something that has no hidden agenda other than to just like do something good for yourself and for others.
I mean, that's how I feel about telling people to eat mushrooms. I'm like, only good stuff is going to come out of you eating mushrooms. You'll be more sustainable, more healthy, good polysaccharides, feeding good bacteria, all sorts of stuff like that. But so you've talked about learning your land, and really drawing that connection from nature, because you gain mental health, you gain an understanding of where you live, all these organisms, but it can be intimidating. There's a lot of stuff out there, as you well know, and it's not always clear what's what, and even how to figure out what's what, because there's so many things that can be lookalikes. There's so many things that are invasive versus native. And in some ways it's almost more confusing than ever to try to get into being a naturalist, because there is so much crosstalk between where things have traditionally been and the ranges of things are changing because of global warming. What's your favorite sort of resource, or like, what's your process like when you find something in the woods and you want to figure out what it is?
So my favorite resource is the land itself. Just going out and just spending as much time as you possibly can out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I almost look at it like a skill. Like, if you want to get good at carpentry, like, you have to practice. If you want to get good at piano, you have to practice. If you want to get good at art or water painting or whatever it is, you have to practice. And it's the same thing with nature. You have to go out and practice. You can't just, and I know it's beneficial to go out and just sit out there. Like, I understand that. But if you want to actually learn this stuff, like if you want to learn the trees, if you want to learn the plants, if you want to learn the mushrooms, you have to go out there with this mindset of, what is that? Why is it important that I know what that is? And that's always in my mind. Like, I constantly ask myself, what is it? 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 And I know I will transition to another level. Like, this is just the stage that I'm in right now. And you don't have to stay there. But I think at some point in your education, you have to get to that point where almost everything that you see, even if it's not conscious, it just has to be somewhere in your body. What is it? Even if you don't know what it is, that's perfectly fine. But at least you're just taking the time to wonder what that thing is. Mm-hmm. But also keep in mind, like, at the deepest level, all of this stuff is made up. Every single name that's on something, it's just made up.
Human categorization, so we can understand it, but it's not naturally, its own phylum. That's just something we made up.
Yeah, and I understand the benefit of it. Like, don't get me wrong, I like putting names on things. And it helps us simplify the most complex organization in the world, which is nature itself. Like, we would
Right.
go insane if we couldn't categorize things in life,
Yeah.
including nature. So it's beneficial to know, hey, that's a tree and that's not a mushroom. So like, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna like bring that thing home and like put it in a frying pan and hopefully cook it up with butter in 15 minutes, have a delicious meal. Like, it's beneficial to know differences between those kinds of things. But if this thing doesn't come easy to you, that's okay, because it is made up and it will take some time in order to develop the skills to put names on things and to see connections and all these different things. And I've been at this only maybe 10 years and I still feel like an absolute beginner, but I do treat it like a skill and I'm constantly being sharpened by the master, which is nature itself.
Which is nature.
And every time I go out there, I'm in the presence of the master. And I've got work to do. Like, it gives you homework, and you better stay on top of it because it's easy to fall behind. But the more time you spend out there, the easier it's going to get over time. And if you put 1 day of work in a week, that's good. But what if you put 2 days of work in, or 3 days, or 4 days, or 5 days? And you got to make it a priority as well. Like, we all prioritize things in our life. And if you want to learn this stuff and you want to learn it faster, you have to prioritize it. So the land is number one. Like, sharpen yourself with the master itself, but then sharpen yourself with people who are masterly. So join a mushroom club or join a botanical society, or put a call out there for people who know this stuff and are willing to teach it to you. You can't do it on your own. You could try to do it on your own. You can get decently far on your own, but you're always going to get farther. You're always going to learn something new if you develop your skills with the help of other people. And there are lots of people who want to share this information. It's beneficial for you to learn it from them, but it's also beneficial for them to pass on that information, because that's what humans are meant to do, to learn and then to pass it on to the next generation. But nowadays we've got, surrogates for this stuff. We have people, angry people on Facebook, just throwing out names, and if you throw out the wrong name, or you just get like ostracized from the group, you get kicked out and all this kind of stuff. Facebook groups are fine. I mean, the internet's fine. I learned a lot of stuff that way as well, but don't forget that you got to spend time outside and spend time in the physical presence of people who are willing to teach this stuff.
Yeah, that really does make a big difference. And one of the points you brought up that I really like is going out and saying, what is this? Because I get a lot of questions where people are projecting and they say, is this edible? And my response is usually, that makes me a little nervous for you to ask me edibility, because while it may seem like I'm an expert, I too feel like a complete noob. I don't have an academic background in this stuff, and I don't even have, a year or life's worth of experience. I have a couple of years where I've been really intensely focused on this. And like you said, doing a lot of it. So learning quickly and practicing the skill. But rephrasing the question from what is the, or, from is this edible, or is this psychedelic, or is this whatever I want to project onto it, versus just saying, what is this? And taking it sort of as the object or the life in front of you, allows you to go and look for something like the common name and then find the scientific name. And I like scientific names because in some ways that gives you power. And I don't know if you've ever read Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. Le Guin. Great fantasy book. But there's a concept in that book where if you know something's true name, you gain power over it. And I've always looked at mushrooms and wildlife as being sort of a similar thing. If you can figure out like the scientific name, suddenly you can Google scientific articles, which are going to give you way more information on an organism than you would ever get from just looking up a common name and trying to find, people's random articles about it on the internet. So there's a great value in that question of just asking, what is this in front of me, without projecting your own assumptions on top of that. And so I think, like you're saying, it's really important to get out there with people who know what they're doing. And it's not always easy to find those people, but because of the world we live in, this crazy digital age, we are more connected than ever. And certainly that, for me, was a huge part of starting my account, was realizing that there was this community of experts, of people, of accounts like yours, who were teaching and sharing knowledge. And that has just been such an exciting journey for me. But I also went and joined some local mycology clubs here. So I'm pretty active in SOMA, which is our Sonoma Mycology Society. Do you have like a local club that you do stuff with, or, what, have you been to myco events or camps or anything like that in your time?
Plenty of them.
Plenty.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I mean, one of the greatest joys of my life is the Western Pennsylvania Mushroom Club. And if it wasn't for them, honestly, I probably wouldn't be teaching people mushrooms today. I mean, it was such an instrumental group early on. It still is. But in those early years, like those formative years for me, which was like 2012, 13, 14, 15, I mean, this club was just fantastic, and it still is a fantastic resource. We have over close to 1,000 members in our organization. And Western Pennsylvania isn't huge by any stretch of the imagination, but there are close to 1,000 people in this organization with very humble people, yet very knowledgeable people who are always more than willing to share information with other people. So, I mean, I totally recommend joining a mushroom club. But not even stopping there. I mean, it doesn't have to be a mushroom club. I've learned so much about nature just by going on these like free nature walks at a local environmental center or a state park. And you just learn so much information, even if it's a tree walk, even if it's a wildflower walk, even if it's a birding walk. Because if you're there, you're going to pick up information not just on that subject, but there's so many people who know just a little bit about other things as well. And even if you're there wanting to learn mushrooms, but let's say it's a bird walk, I guarantee that there are some birders who probably know five top choice wild edible mushrooms that you can forage. And so it's always worth it to go on these things because there's always like some nugget of information that they'll teach you in a way that you won't ever pick up in any kind of book. And this has been true for me, not just for mushrooms, but for trees. Many times I go on botanical society walks, and some of the walk leaders will just say something about a tree, like the way that it looks, and I'll never find that piece of information anywhere else, but it's the way they see it, and now I see it that way, so I teach people. Because books can be very, very limiting, but it's always great to hang out with people, and those kinds of walks are one of the best ways to do it.
That's a great point. I think people are always asking me, hey, Gordon, what book should I buy? And I'm like, I feel sort of uncomfortable promoting certain books over other ones or anything like that because, you know, there's financial stuff at play. And honestly, I don't use books that much. I primarily use like online resources, something like iNaturalist, but people are one of the best resources I have. And certainly if I were to go to Pennsylvania, A, I would hit you up because I want to go mushroom hunting with you, but B, I would be sending you photos of stuff that's in Pennsylvania. And when I get people sending me photos from the East Coast, I will direct them towards other people that I know are on the East Coast to help them with the IDs because there is a lot of local knowledge and there is incredible depth of experience that you can't get out of a book. A taxonomic key doesn't teach you the features of a mushroom the way that a human being can because you can see it through their eyes, through the lens of their experience. And I think that brings a lot of value to what you're learning. And like you said, human beings key into experiences. You might remember that random thing a guy told you on a walk from 8 years ago, and you'll never find that kind of information in a book. But I guarantee you've told a bunch of people that same tidbit, and it probably stuck in a similar kind of way. So it's pretty incredible how like the intersection of storytelling and human interaction collides with being a naturalist and a desire to like learn about nature. So that's pretty cool. But let's see. Did I have anything else in here I wanted to ask you? I feel like I could just keep peppering you with more and more questions. Here's a good one. Do you have any myco muses? Are there any people out there who've been really like, even if it's a guy who was a birder that taught you about something, but is there anyone sort of in the mushroom community particularly that's been a big myco muse for you?
Yeah, very humble yet not well-known people that are very local to Western Pennsylvania. I mean,
that's awesome.
I'm very familiar with the big names that are out there. I've got some books by them. I've seen some videos. I've been to some of their lectures, but none of them have really inspired me to get into this. And I know they inspire other people, but they just don't do it for me. It's always the local people who just kind of do this as a side thing, but they're very good and they share their information very generously. So I'll just throw one name out. Not many people know his name, but he's written a couple smaller books. His name's John Plischke the third, and he was one of the founding members of our club. But I mean, he lives in southwestern Pennsylvania, one of the most knowledgeable mushroom hunters ever. But you wouldn't know it just looking at him. But so generous with his time, with his knowledge. But I mean, I don't think like TED, the organization TED, like TED Talks, are ever going to call him up and be like, John, will you do a lecture for us? Or I don't ever think he's going to like be up there, with some of the greats as far as like, the clout that some people are getting today. But he should. He honestly should. Like, he is at that level, but he doesn't want it. And I think that's absolutely perfect. I mean, another name which is kind of big, which is actually really big, but Gary Linkoff.
Yeah, he's the East Coast guy of mushrooms, and he recently passed away, but he's been so influential.
Yeah, and I mean, so he is one of those bigger name people. And I wish it was a bigger name. He is from Pittsburgh, and I'm from Pittsburgh as well. But that's not the only reason that I took a liking to him. Incredibly humble. An incredibly humble person. Like, never wanted fame, never sought out fame. He got some of it because he edited the National Audubon Society Field Guide to Mushrooms, which is a bestseller today. And he toured around for a while, but he passed away a couple years ago. And I had a couple opportunities to hang out with him, and I interviewed him, and I put a video out on YouTube. But he was so humble and so generous with his knowledge. And he would never put anybody down, never. And you look online today at so many people who just put other people down in the mushroom community for not knowing something or for idolizing a certain person. It's like, who cares who you idolize? Like, it doesn't really matter. It's like, you guys share so much in common with one another. Why do you have to put somebody down? Gary Linkoff never would, but he was a funny guy. It wasn't like he was some super dry, pure person. No, he was a really funny guy with a great sense of humor. But he wasn't just into mushrooms. He was a generalist. He liked plants. He liked trees. And he told me he did not want to be known as the mushroom guy. But he got pegged the mushroom guy. Everybody knows him as the mushroom guy. Nobody knows him as the foraging guy or the tree guy or the bird guy. But he knew so much. So he was a generalist. And I really like that about him. And he was not so interested in names. He was so curious about what are things doing out there and how are things connected. He said names are boring. After a while, it's just like, yeah, this is that, this is that. But what is something doing? Why is it there? And that really stuck with me over the years. So I put him up there with John Plishke, those two guys.
That's awesome. Yeah, I like to ask that question just because I think there are a lot of sort of unsung mushroom heroes. And we all know who the banner leader people are, but I think we have an opportunity to be another voices of a generation. People are going to look to us and say, hey, you inspire me. And you and I are going to go, I don't look to me for inspiration. I'm just, I'm another person out there in the woods trying to learn myself. We all feel like amateurs, but there's something to be said for the fact that we can share the people that are heroes, that have inspired us, the resources that we've, have been helpful in getting to where we've been. And I think there's a real need in society too, as we try to get everybody adjusted to the idea that global climate change that already happened. Right now, we're looking at trying to prevent global climate collapse. And the more that we can get people to get out into nature, recognize how important it is, recognize the value of it, the interconnectedness of it, the biodiversity, all those things are strengths and resources that we have been trashing throughout a lot of human history. And we need to turn around and start realizing that we are the vanguards of nature now. Nature is no longer this scary force that we're fighting against the bears in the darkness of the woods. No, we need to be locking ourselves to trees to try to prevent developers from, decimating habitats for endangered, threatened species and stuff like that. So again, that I am just very thankful that you exist, that your account exists, that so many people have keyed into what you're doing. I think it's amazing that you've got your classes, and your website's just learnyourland.com.
Yeah, learnyourland.com. A lot of people think it's know your land or learn about your land, but learn your land.
Learn your land. We're going to get this man on a billboard. We're going to get some of those things you've said, plastered across state buildings somewhere. I think the energy that you exude, the patience, the education, everything that you do is just immaculate. And I'm so stoked that I get to learn from you and that you took the time to talk with me today. So it's been
likewise.
It's been a real
You're
pleasure.
doing great stuff as well.
Thanks,
I looked to your Instagram account for inspiration because you got quite the following, and it's great. So keep up that work as well. And I hope to see more videos of yours on YouTube.
Yeah, I'll work on it. I'm trying to. I got to learn from you how to do that long form content thing, but I'll get there. We got some good things in the mix this winter, so
sounds good.
Should be a good one. All right, Adam. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Have a good day or night. I guess you're East Coast, so
yeah, nice and dark out right now.
Good luck
finishing pretty soon.
Finishing the mushroom season. And oh god, yeah, I meant to ask you about food and cooking another time. I will talk to you about cooking and
Yeah,
mushrooms
we'll do this
forever.
again.
So
Cool.
all right,
Yeah,
man.
thanks again.
Have a good one.
And thanks to everybody for tuning in. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Bye bye.
Bye.